She had been working in that underground base for only 3 weeks, and still, every time she stepped into the war briefing room, she felt the weight of 100 unspoken stories pressing in on her. It wasn't a place for small talk or smiles. It was a place filled with glowing maps, quiet tension, and officers who carried the world on their shoulders. Yet somehow, she had become the one they trusted with the little things. Fresh coffee, steady hands, and a calm presence even when alarms echoed somewhere far down the corridor. That morning felt different. She could sense it the moment she pushed open the heavy steel door. The air was thick, not just with stress, but with expectation. Generals and analysts stood crowded around the table, eyes fixed on a moving line of red markers sliding across the digital map. No one looked away, no one even blinked. She tried to steady her breaths, reminding herself she was here to do a simple task. She walked quietly, pouring coffee into mugs lined up beside the Admiral's seat, careful not to let a single drop spill. She thought she was invisible, just another quiet face doing background work. But then the Admiral looked up. His voice cut through the room like a sharp bell. He didn't call for more reports or updates or orders. He spoke one word. Her call sign. A name no one here should have known. Every head turned toward her. Her hand froze in midair, the coffee still pouring until it overflowed, dripping down the side of the mug. For a moment she couldn't move, she couldn't speak. The only sound was the low hum of the screens and the distant rumble from the base's generators. She felt a strange mix of confusion and fear, but also something else, something she hadn't felt in years. Recognition. How did he know that call sign? She hadn't used it since the day she walked away from everything. She didn't think it would ever reach her again, especially not in a room full of people who had no idea who she truly was. The Admiral's gaze didn't soften. He simply said, "We need you." And in that instant, she knew the past she thought she'd buried was about to crash straight into her present, and the entire room was waiting to hear why. She felt every pair of eyes locked on her, but the Admiral's stare held the real weight. For a second, she wondered if she had misheard him, if maybe her mind had slipped back into old memories. But no, he had spoken her call sign clearly, the same one she had sworn she would never answer to again. Her chest tightened. She set the coffee pot down slowly, trying to keep her hands from shaking, but it was too late. Everyone had already noticed. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The Admiral didn't seem surprised by her silence. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, studying her like he was trying to match the woman in front of him with the person he remembered from old classified files. She didn't know how much he knew, or how much he guessed, but it was obvious he wasn't calling her out of curiosity. He needed something, something she had hoped would stay buried forever. Around the table, officers exchanged confused glances. They knew her only as the quiet assistant who arrived early, made strong coffee, and stayed out of the way. They didn't know she once had a different life, one that moved through shadows and silent missions. They didn't know about the operation that had gone wrong, or the choice that forced her to walk away from her old life. She had changed her name, her location, everything. This base was supposed to be a clean page, but hearing that call sign pulled all the old pages back open. The Admiral tapped a button, and a new image appeared on the screen. A blurred satellite photo, magnified again and again until a small figure came into focus. She felt the blood drain from her face. She knew that silhouette, not from reports or rumors, but from memories she wished she didn't carry. "This showed up 2 days ago," the Admiral said quietly, his voice low enough that the room leaned in. "And we think it's connected to you." She wanted to deny it, to step back and pretend she didn't recognize what she was seeing. But her throat closed, and her pulse hammered in her ears. The past wasn't just knocking. It had already stepped inside. And now everyone was waiting for her next move. For a moment, she simply stared at the blurry image on the screen, wishing it was just another unknown figure, someone with no link to her past. But the outline was too familiar. The way the person stood, the slight tilt of their head, even the shape of the gear strapped across their back. It all came rushing back, like a door she never wanted to open had been pushed wide open by force. She took a slow breath, trying to steady herself, but her heartbeat kept climbing. The Admiral didn't press her for an answer. He just watched, waiting for the truth to show in her eyes. The others in the room looked between her and the screen, trying to connect dots they didn't understand. She could almost feel their confusion, their curiosity building with every second she stayed silent. She had known her only as the calm girl with quiet footsteps and warm smiles. The idea that she might be connected to something bigger, something dangerous, did not fit the picture they had of her. She wanted to explain, but where would she even start? With the mission that changed everything? With the partner she lost in the chaos? With the choice she made when she walked away from her old life and promised herself she would never go back? There were too many pieces, and even she didn't like holding them anymore. The Admiral finally spoke again, this time softer, as if he knew she was standing at the edge of something she had tried hard to bury. "We didn't call you in to expose you," he said, "but we can't ignore this. Whoever is in that image, they were seen near one of our restricted borders, and they left a message." He clicked another button. A short line of text appeared under the image. Just a few words, but enough to make her mouth go dry. It was a phrase only 2 people in the world would ever use. She stepped back without realizing it, pressing her hand against the table to steady herself. The room felt smaller now, every sound sharper, every stare heavier. Nothing about her new life was safe anymore. And she knew that whatever was coming next wouldn't let her walk away a second time. Her breathing felt tight, almost uneven as she stared at the message glowing beneath the grainy silhouette. It wasn't long, it wasn't dramatic, but it carried a weight only she could feel. The Admiral didn't have to explain anything. The truth was already sinking into her, thick and cold. If that person had resurfaced after all this time, it meant something bigger was moving in the shadows, something she thought she had escaped forever. She forced herself to stand straight, but her legs felt unsteady. The officers around the table stayed silent, sensing that this moment was more than just another update in a briefing. They watched her carefully, waiting for her to speak, waiting for some explanation. But she couldn't give one yet. Not yet when so many years of silence were suddenly cracking open in front of her. The Admiral slid a small device across the table toward her. Its screen was dark, its edges worn like it had been handled too many times. "This was found at the border site too," he said. "It was left out in the open, as if it was meant for us to find." "No, me," she corrected silently. "It was meant for her." She picked it up, her fingers trembling despite her efforts to hide it. The moment her skin touched the surface, a rush of old memories surged back. Dusty roads, coded signals, late-night missions, and a voice she once trusted more than her own instincts. She had walked away from all of it, believing the past would stay behind her if she kept moving. But now it was reaching out, pulling her back with a grip she couldn't break. "Whoever this is," one of the officers finally said, breaking the tense quiet, "they crossed into restricted territory, knowing we'd track it." She swallowed hard. "They wanted my attention." The Admiral nodded, confirming what she already knew. "And now we need to know why." The lights in the room dimmed as another satellite image came up, this one closer, clearer, and far more alarming. A location she recognized, a place tied to everything she tried to forget. She felt her pulse thundering as the picture sharpened. Whatever was waiting there was meant for her, and facing it would force her to confront the one truth she feared more than anything. Her past wasn't just coming back. It was already here. Her breathing felt tight, almost uneven as she stared at the message glowing beneath the grainy silhouette. It wasn't long, it wasn't dramatic, but it carried a weight only she could feel. The Admiral didn't have to explain anything. The truth was already sinking into her, thick and cold. If that person had resurfaced after all this time, it meant something bigger was moving in the shadows, something she thought she had escaped forever.
She forced herself to stand straight, but her legs felt unsteady. The officers around the table stayed silent, sensing that this moment was more than just another update in a briefing. They watched her carefully, waiting for her to speak, waiting for some explanation. But she couldn't give one yet. Not yet when so many years of silence were suddenly cracking open in front of her. The Admiral slid a small device across the table toward her. Its screen was dark, its edges worn like it had been handled too many times. This was found at the border site too, he said. It was left out in the open, as if it was meant for us to find. No, me, she corrected silently. It was meant for her. She picked it up, her fingers trembling despite her efforts to hide it. The moment her skin touched the surface, a rush of old memories surged back. Dusty roads, coded signals, late-night missions, and a voice she once trusted more than her own instincts.
And they activated the internal systems 2 days ago. Her pulse quickened. If the structure was active, then someone had access to the secure files stored there. Files she thought had been destroyed. Files tied to missions so classified that even the officers in this room wouldn't know their names. And there was only one person alive who had the knowledge to bring that place back to life. But before she could speak, another alert blinked on the screen. A second figure. Another silhouette. This one wasn't from her past. It was from her present. It was someone inside this very base. She felt a chill ripple down her spine as the truth tightened around her. It wasn't just an old ghost returning. Someone here was working with them. And the real threat wasn't coming from outside. It was already seated in the room with her. For a long moment, no one spoke. The second silhouette hovered on the screen like a shadow neither the Admiral nor the officers wanted to acknowledge. She searched the outline, hoping she was wrong. But the stance, the height, the tilt of the head, it was all too familiar. Her throat tightened as the truth settled in. It was someone she saw every morning in the hallways. Someone who nodded politely, held doors open, and blended into the rhythm of the base just like she had tried to. They had been close enough to overhear conversations, close enough to study the Admiral's routines, close enough to learn her schedule without raising suspicion. They had been here the entire time, hiding in plain sight. The Admiral's voice cut through the tense silence. "We believe this person has been passing information out of the base, and now they've joined the operation at that site." Her pulse hammered, but she straightened, the fear shifting into something steadier, resolve. "Then we go now," she said, surprising even herself. "If the place is active again, we won't have much time." Within the hour, she was in the field team's transport jet, the engine rumbling beneath her feet. The Admiral sat across from her, briefing the team, but his eyes kept drifting toward her as if confirming she was ready. She didn't blame him. She had spent years running from this moment. Now she was flying straight into it. When they reached the compound, quiet shadows stretched across the ground. The structure looked untouched, almost like a memory she had stepped back into. As they moved deeper inside, she could hear faint machinery humming, systems that should never work again. Then they saw him, the first silhouette, the figure from her past. He stepped into the dim light, older but unmistakable. "You came," he said softly, as if he had been waiting for years. She opened her mouth to demand answers, but another sound cut through the room. Footsteps behind them. The second figure emerged, hands raised, expression calm, not afraid, not caught, prepared. The Admiral stiffened. "Why?" he asked. The traitor gave a small, almost relieved smile. "Because she wasn't the only one they were looking for." Before she could react, the screens around them flickered to life, revealing a broadcast signal already spreading outward. Her heart froze. The twist wasn't that the past had returned. It was that it had never been hunting her alone. For a second, all she could do was stare at the glowing screens, the broadcast signal spreading in a pattern she recognized too well. It wasn't an attack, it wasn't a threat. It was a release. An encrypted dump of old mission files that had been hidden for years. Files showing what really happened the night everything fell apart. She felt the tension in her chest loosen just a little. The truth she had been carrying alone was finally surfacing. Not twisted, not manipulated, but exactly as it happened. The Admiral stepped forward, his voice steady. "You didn't betray us," he said to her quietly. "You tried to protect what you could." She nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. "I didn't want anyone else dragged into it." The figure from her past watched her with a softened expression. "You walked away because you thought leaving would stop the fallout. But someone inside kept feeding the old network. We needed the truth out before it was used again." She looked toward the second figure, the one from her present, who lowered her head, the defiant edge gone from their expression. "I didn't do it to harm the base. I did it because the truth had been buried for too long. You deserve to be cleared." The room settled into a heavy quiet. It wasn't the ending she expected, but it was the one she finally understood. The rebuilt compound, the signals, the sudden reappearance, it had all been a way to bring everything into the open, to close a chapter that had stayed unfinished for too long. By the time the systems powered down and the screens went dark, she felt lighter than she had in years. The past hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined her. Walking out of the compound, she breathed in the cool air, the early light stretching across the ground. The Admiral walked beside her. He said gently, "You know, you don't have to run anymore." She smiled, a small, real smile. "I'm not running. Not this time." And for the first time since she stepped into the war briefing room with a pot of coffee and a quiet life, she felt the future open in front of her, clear, honest, and entirely her own. Every great mystery deserves an audience. If you love this one, hit subscribe, like the video, and share it with your friends. Join the growing family of thriller seekers.